The arrival. Max Holloway had been in the Galactic Detention Facility for only 3 standard cycles when the incident occurred. The human kept to himself, exercising in his cell and speaking little, even to the other prisoners from Earth. The guards had labeled his file with the dreaded Deathworlder designation, a term that spread through the facility like wildfire. Most aliens in the prison avoided Max. They whispered about humans when they thought he couldn't hear. Earth was classified as a death world, a planet so harsh that any species evolving there must be naturally dangerous. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, toxic oxygen levels, and aggressive wildlife had shaped humans into something the galactic community viewed with caution. Max didn't mind the isolation. After the mess with the colonial shipping lanes that landed him here, he preferred quiet. His daily routine was simple. Wake at first bell, exercise until breakfast, read the few approved texts during midday lockdown, exercise again, then sleep. The monotony helped pass the time. Today marked the beginning of his 4th cycle. Max was completing his morning workout, one-armed push-ups that made his muscles burn pleasantly, when he noticed the shadow falling across his cell floor. "So that's the famous human," a voice hissed from the doorway. Max continued his exercises without looking up. 58, 59, 60. He switched arms and started again. The visitor was a Valian named Zorax. His species resembled Earth lizards with iridescent scales covering their bodies. Unlike Earth reptiles, Valians had 6 limbs, 4 arms, and 2 legs, and stood nearly 7 feet tall. Their society valued physical dominance above all else. "Doesn't look so dangerous to me," Zorax said loudly, clearly wanting to be heard. A smaller alien clicked nervously beside him. This was Dex, a prill with insect-like features who served as Zorax's lieutenant. "The guards say his planet has 1.5 g gravity, and the atmospheric composition." "Spare me the science lesson," Zorax interrupted. "I've broken beings from 17 systems. One more won't make a difference." Max completed his set and stood up slowly, wiping sweat from his forehead. At 6 feet tall, he was shorter than Zorax, but broader through the shoulders and chest. His prison-issued gray jumpsuit was damp with sweat. "Can I help you?" Max asked, his voice neutral. Zorax's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of excitement in his species. "Perhaps. I run C-Block. Have for 3 years. New arrivals typically offer respect." Max nodded once. Noted. The response clearly wasn't what Zorax expected. His scales flashed a pattern of dark blue and yellow, anger and challenge. "That's all you have to say, human?" Max looked directly at Zorax for the first time. His expression remained calm, but something in his eyes made Dex step back involuntarily. "I'm not looking for trouble," Max said quietly. "I'm just serving my time." Zorax's primary hands clenched into fists. "Everyone looks for something in here, Deathworlder. Safety, power, respect. Nothing comes free." "I don't need anything from you," Max replied. The prison alarm sounded, signaling the end of morning free period. Guards would be coming to escort prisoners to the mess hall soon. Zorax leaned closer to the cell bars. "We'll continue this discussion later, human. Everyone learns their place here, even Deathworlders." As Zorax and Dex moved away, Max returned to his bunk. He had hoped to avoid attention, to serve his sentence quietly. Now it seemed that wouldn't be possible. The first rule of survival on Earth: predators always notice those who stand out. The same, apparently, was true in Galactic Prison. The mess hall fell quiet as Zorax approached Max's table. The human sat alone, consuming his nutrient pack with mechanical efficiency. Other prisoners watched with interest. Confrontations during meal periods were common and provided welcome entertainment. Max had chosen the most isolated table, yet the message was clear. Zorax wasn't finished with their earlier conversation. 4 guards stood at the corners of the room, armed with neural stunners but looking bored. They rarely intervened in minor disputes. Deathworlder, Zorax announced, looming over Max. His scales rippled with bright patterns meant to intimidate. Your kind think you're special, that everyone should fear you because you evolved on a harsh planet. Max continued eating, not bothering to look up. His tray contained the standard prison fare, a protein cube, vitamin supplement, and hydration packet. The food was designed to sustain all species but satisfy none. On my world, we have a saying, Zorax continued, his voice carrying across the now silent room. The apex predator must constantly prove its position, or it will be challenged. A murmur of agreement came from several alien prisoners scattered throughout the hall. Their culture respected strength above all else. Zorax placed his 4 hands on the table, leaning forward. In my culture, hierarchy must be established. Tomorrow, we fight in the yard. Winner takes respect. Loser, his lipless mouth curved into what passed for a smile. Well, loser takes nothing. Max finally looked up, his eyes unnervingly calm. No thank you. The denial sent ripples of shocked whispers through the hall. No one refused Zorax, not if they wanted to avoid weeks in the medical bay. Zorax slammed his primary hands on the table, sending Max's tray skittering. It wasn't a request, human. It's how things work here. Max retrieved his water packet, which had fallen but not broken. I'm not interested in how things work here. I'm interested in serving my time without trouble. A tall, blue-skinned Cryosan named Levick laughed from a nearby table. The Deathworlder is scared. Not so dangerous after all. Max returned to his meal, seemingly unbothered by the mockery. This only infuriated Zorax more. Perhaps you don't understand your situation, Zorax hissed, lowering his voice. I control who gets extra rations, who gets access to contraband, who sleeps safely at night. Refuse my challenge, and life becomes difficult. I understand perfectly, Max replied calmly. You want to prove yourself by beating the new Deathworlder. It establishes your dominance and strengthens your position. Fighting you serves your interests, not mine. Zorax's scales darkened with rage. You insult me with your cowardice. I'm declining a fight, not insulting you. Max stood up, tray in hand. There's a difference. As Max turned to leave, Zorax moved with surprising speed. One of his secondary arms shot out to grip Max's shoulder, claws digging through the prison jumpsuit. No one walks away from me, Zorax growled. What happened next occurred so quickly that witnesses later disagreed on the sequence of events. Max's tray dropped. His hand moved to where Zorax gripped him. There was a slight twist, a barely audible popping sound, and suddenly Zorax was kneeling, his arm bent at an unnatural angle. Max leaned down and spoke quietly, but in the silence of the mess hall, everyone heard. I said no. Please don't touch me again. He released Zorax, picked up his tray, and walked away. The Valian remained kneeling, his scales flashing patterns of pain and humiliation. One of the guards finally stirred. Back to your meals, everyone. Show's over. But everyone knew the show was just beginning. No one humiliated Zorax and walked away. The challenge had been issued whether Max wanted it or not. Word of Max's refusal spread through the prison. Some prisoners viewed it as cowardice, others as disrespect to Valian customs. Zorax couldn't allow either interpretation to stand. Prison life quickly became difficult for Max. The next day, he found his water ration accidentally spilled by one of Zorax's cronies. His exercise period was interrupted by random security checks that took up most of his allotted time. His sleep cycle was disturbed by mysterious noises outside his cell. You brought this on yourself, Deathworlder, whispered a Dravidi prisoner named Sarn as they waited in the shower line. Zorax will make your life miserable until you face him. Max said nothing, his face revealing no emotion. By the third day, small inconveniences had escalated to actual threats. During work detail in the laundry facility, a heavy cart mysteriously rolled toward Max, missing him by inches. In the exercise yard, a thrown-weight disc nearly struck his head while he was doing push-ups. Max observed it all with the same unreadable expression. He neither complained to guards nor retaliated. This seemed to infuriate Zorax even more. The human is weak, Zorax told his followers during recreation period. On his death world, he might have been something, but here he's nothing. Just another soft-skinned mammal pretending to be dangerous. Officer Natalie Rivera, recently transferred from Earth's penal colony exchange program, noticed the escalating situation. Unlike most of the alien guards, she understood what a human was capable of. "Holloway," she said during her rounds, "I've noticed increased activity around your cell block. Is there something I should know about?" "Nothing I can't handle, officer," Max replied calmly. Rivera frowned. "Prison protocol requires me to report potential conflicts." "There's no conflict," Max said. "Just a misunderstanding that will resolve itself." After Rivera left, Max's cellmate, a draconian smuggler named Kraz, folded his leathery wings against his back and chuckled. "You're either the bravest or stupidest human I've met," Kraz said. "And I smuggled many of your kind through Sector 8. I just want to be left alone," Max replied. "No one gets left alone here," Kraz said. "Especially not a novelty like a Deathworlder." That evening in the meal hall, Zorax's campaign reached new heights. As Max sat with his tray, 3 of Zorax's gang surrounded him. "Nutrient Cube looks spoiled," one said, reaching for Max's food. "Better let me check it." Max's hand shot out, grabbing the alien's wrist before it touched his tray. He applied just enough pressure to stop the movement, no more. "Don't," Max said quietly. Across the room, Zorax watched with interest. The human's reaction had been quicker than expected. After dinner, as prisoners filed back to their cells, Max approached Zorax in the corridor. The Valian's followers tensed, ready for confrontation. "Let's settle this," Max said quietly, startling the Valian who hadn't heard him approach. "Tomorrow. Your rules." Zorax recovered quickly. "So the Deathworlder finds his spine. Tomorrow it is. Just you and me," Max added. "No interference from your friends. Afraid of being outnumbered?" Zorax's scales flashed with amusement. "No," Max replied. "Just setting boundaries." Officer Rivera, standing nearby, overheard the exchange. She immediately filed a report, but prison protocol was clear. Minor altercations between prisoners were handled internally unless medical intervention became necessary. As Max walked away, his expression remained neutral, but for the first time since arriving at the Galactic Detention Facility, there was something different in his eyes, something that made the other prisoners step back to let him pass. The prison buzzed with anticipation. Bets were placed using contraband items and favor tokens. The odds heavily favored Zorax, who stood nearly 7 feet tall with hardened exoskeletal plates and regenerative capabilities. Most prisoners believed Max would be severely injured, if not killed outright. 6-1 against the human, a 4-armed Quillen named Bax announced, organizing the betting pool. "Last chance to place your wagers before the fight." Even the guards seemed interested, positioning themselves strategically around the yard where the confrontation would take place. Official policy prohibited fighting, but everyone knew certain conflicts were allowed to play out as long as they didn't threaten overall prison security. In his cell, Max sat quietly, eyes closed, breathing regulated. He didn't train, didn't pace, didn't show any signs of concern. To an observer, he might have appeared to be sleeping, but his mind was fully active. Kraz watched his cellmate with growing curiosity. "Aren't you going to prepare? Zorax has killed 3 inmates during his time here." "I'm prepared," Max said without opening his eyes. "He's twice your size with natural armor," Kraz insisted. "And he's got 4 arms, each strong enough to break bone." Max finally opened his eyes. Size isn't everything. It is when it comes with strength, speed, and natural weapons, Kraz countered. Max didn't respond. He simply resumed his meditation. During afternoon inspection, Officer Rivera passed by his cell. She paused, checking that no other guards were within earshot. "Holloway, I know about tomorrow. I can get you protection if you request it." Max opened his eyes. "I appreciate the concern, officer, but it's unnecessary. Zorax has killed 3 inmates during his time here. I'm not planning on making it 4. Max's voice held no bravado, just simple statement of fact. "You don't understand what you're up against," Rivera insisted. Max's expression softened slightly. "With respect, officer, neither does he." Rivera shook her head and moved on. Humans were notoriously stubborn, and this one seemed determined to learn his lesson the hard way. That evening, Zorax put on a display in the mess hall, performing strength feats that had his followers cheering. He crushed a metal food tray with his bare hands, then bent a support rod that had come loose from a table. "Tomorrow," he announced loudly, "I will show everyone what happens when a pretend predator faces a real one." Max ate quietly at his usual table, seemingly oblivious to the display. Later, as lights dimmed for sleep cycle, Kraz made one last attempt to understand his cellmate. "I've known many humans in my smuggling days," he said. "Most were loud, boastful about their strength. You're different." "We're not all the same," Max replied. "True, but all humans I've met share one trait. They fight when cornered." "Are you cornered, Max Holloway?" Max considered the question. "No, I chose this fight." "Why?" "You avoided it for days." "Because sometimes the only way to end a conflict is to face it directly," Max said. "And because Zorax won't stop until he gets what he wants." "Which is?" "To prove his dominance. To show everyone he's not afraid of the Deathworlder." Max closed his eyes again. "But there's something Zorax doesn't understand about humans." "What's that?" Kraz asked. "We didn't survive on Earth by being the strongest species. We survived by being the most adaptable." Max turned over on his bunk. "Good night, Kraz." As the cell block quieted, prisoners throughout the facility wondered what tomorrow would bring. Most expected blood. Some expected death. None, except perhaps Max himself, expected what actually happened. The yard fell silent as Max walked to the center where Zorax waited. Prisoners formed a wide circle, eager for the spectacle. Guards stood at a distance, neural stunners ready, but clearly intending to let the fight proceed. Zorax performed an elaborate display, extending his limbs to maximize his apparent size, while his scales shifted through threatening color patterns, crimson to amber to electric blue. In Valian culture, this pre-combat ritual was meant to intimidate opponents before physical contact even began. Traditional Valian combat has 3 stages. Zorax announced for the crowd: intimidation, subjugation, and domination. We appear to be completing the first stage already. Max stood still, hands at his sides. His prison jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame, making him appear smaller than he was. His expression remained neutral, showing neither fear nor excitement. "When does the fight start?" he asked. Zorax's colors rippled with anger. "The fight has already begun, ignorant mammal. But if you require more direct instruction." The Valian lunged with blinding speed, 4 arms extending toward Max while 2 braced for stability. It was a technique that had successfully immobilized countless opponents. What happened next became prison legend. Max moved, not away, but toward Zorax. The human stepped inside the reach of those grasping limbs, eliminating their leverage advantage. His movements were precise, economical, almost gentle. He redirected rather than blocked, pulled rather than pushed. As Zorax's momentum carried him forward, Max pivoted slightly, guiding one of the Valian's arms across his own body. The alien's natural strength worked against him as Max used minimal force to direct that power where he wanted it to go. The crowd gasped as Zorax suddenly found himself off balance. Max's hand found a pressure point where Valian arm joints connected, applying focused pressure rather than brute force. Zorax tried to compensate with his other arms, but Max had positioned himself perfectly. Each movement the Valian made only worsened his situation. In less than 6 seconds, Zorax found himself face down, one arm twisted at an unnatural angle, another pinned beneath him. Max's knee rested lightly on the Valian's spine, applying just enough pressure to immobilize without injury. "Do we need to continue?" Max asked quietly. The yard remained silent, prisoners and guards alike, stunned by the swift reversal. Zorax had never been defeated, let alone so quickly and efficiently. "This is impossible," Zorax hissed, his scales now pale with shock. "No mere human can." Max applied slightly more pressure to the joint lock, causing Zorax to gasp. "It's very possible," Max said. "The question is whether we need to continue this demonstration." Pride warred with pain in Zorax's expression. "You've made your point," he finally said. Max immediately released him and stepped back. He offered no gloating, no victory celebration. Instead, he simply extended a hand to help Zorax up. The Valian stared at the offered hand with confusion before reluctantly accepting it. As Max pulled him to his feet, he spoke quietly enough that only Zorax could hear. "I declined your challenge because I didn't want to hurt you, not because I was afraid." Zorax's scales shifted to a dark purple, a color of contemplation and reassessment in Valian emotional displays. "What fighting style was that?" he asked. "Just basics. Leverage, timing, and understanding how bodies move," Max replied. "On Earth, we learn that strength alone is rarely enough." The guards moved in, breaking up the gathering crowd. "Show's over," one announced. "Back to your scheduled activities." As prisoners dispersed, many looked at Max with new eyes. The human hadn't just won a fight. He had completely controlled it from start to finish, using his opponent's strength against him with minimal effort. Most disturbing of all to the watching aliens was that Max hadn't even appeared to try very hard. Zorax was released to the medical bay with a dislocated lung joint and, more significantly, a shattered reputation. Max returned to his cell without celebration or comment. He resumed his usual routine as if nothing unusual had happened. The prison dynamics shifted immediately. Several prisoners approached Max with offerings of extra rations or contraband goods, the traditional tribute to a new alpha. Max declined them all politely but firmly. "I don't want to be in charge," he told a confused Dravidi who had offered him a smuggled data chip. "I just want to serve my time quietly." The concept baffled most aliens. In their societies, defeating the dominant individual meant taking their position. Max's refusal to follow this pattern made him even more unsettling to them than his fighting skills had. During the next meal period, no one sat at Max's table, not out of fear, but out of a new kind of respect. Even Zorax's former followers kept their distance, watching the human with cautious curiosity. Officer Rivera found him reading a battered physical book during evening inspection. She paused at his cell, checking that no other guards were nearby. "What you did today," she began, "was regrettable but necessary," Max finished, not looking up from his book. "I didn't come here looking for trouble." "No one ever does," Rivera replied. "For what it's worth, you've probably prevented more violence than you caused." Zorax's reign wasn't exactly peaceful. Max nodded. "I know the type. They don't understand the difference between being feared and being respected. And you do." "I was a high school physics teacher before." He gestured at the cell around him. You learn the difference quickly with teenagers." Rivera raised an eyebrow. "A physics teacher. That explains the leverage techniques you used. Conservation of momentum, right?" Max smiled slightly. "Something like that. Simple physics and anatomy." "Well, whatever it was, word has spread. You probably won't have any more challenges." "Good," Max said. "That's all I wanted." After Rivera continued her rounds, Kraz returned to their shared cell. The Draconian moved carefully around Max, his leathery wings folded tightly against his back. "The entire prison is talking about you," Kraz said. "Some say you're not really a teacher, but a special forces operative." Max turned a page in his book. People like exciting stories. Zorax had ruled C-Block for 3 years. No one could touch him. Then you put him down in seconds without even breathing hard. Kraz settled on his own bunk. If you're just a physics teacher, then Earth must be even more dangerous than they say. Max finally looked up. Earth isn't special, Kraz. Every planet has its challenges. We just adapted to ours differently. By learning to fight like that. By learning to observe, analyze, and solve problems efficiently, Max corrected. Violence is rarely the most efficient solution. Over the following days, a strange new order established itself in the prison. Where Zorax had ruled through fear and strength, Max created a vacuum by refusing to take charge. Smaller factions formed, each controlling their own affairs, but careful not to disturb the quiet human who read books and exercised in his cell. Even Zorax, after returning from medical treatment, made no move to challenge Max again. Instead, the Valian watched him with something like curiosity, occasionally asking questions about human culture or Earth's environment. Perhaps Zorax told him during exercise period, "I have misunderstood what makes Deathworlders dangerous. It is not your strength, is it?" Max completed his set of pull-ups before answering. "On Earth, we have many predators stronger than humans. We survived because we could outthink them." A valuable lesson, Zorax admitted, his scales shifting to a thoughtful blue. One I won't forget. 2 weeks after the incident, Max received an unexpected visitor. Admiral John Bennett of the Earth Alliance Navy sat across from him in the visitation pod. The Admiral wore a simple gray civilian suit, but his military bearing was unmistakable. The guards had given them privacy, activating only the sound-dampening field around the pod. "Mr. Holloway," the Admiral began, "I hope you've been treated well." Max's face remained neutral. He glanced at the security camera in the corner before responding. "As well as can be expected. Has something changed with my case?" The Admiral leaned forward, speaking quietly despite the sound dampening. "Your infiltration of this facility has yielded valuable intelligence. We've identified 3 major smuggling operations and a potential terrorist cell. Your cover remains intact." Max showed no reaction to this revelation. And the real Max Holloway. "Safe in protective custody, as agreed. Your resemblance to him continues to serve us well." The Admiral slid a data chip across the table. It was disguised as a common personal effects token that prisoners were allowed to keep. New intelligence. Memorize and destroy. Max nodded, palming the chip smoothly. Timeline for extraction. Another 3 months, possibly 4. We need to trace the weapons shipments to their source. Zorax complicated things. I had to establish a position in the hierarchy sooner than planned. Max's voice remained conversational, as if discussing something mundane. The Admiral smiled thinly. "From what I hear, you handled it with admirable restraint. The diplomatic corps was concerned you might reveal too much about human capabilities. I showed exactly what I needed to, nothing more. The technique you used. Modified Aikido with some pressure point applications. Nothing that would suggest specialized military training." Max tapped his fingers lightly on the table. "Have we learned why the Kraven Syndicate is moving weapons through this sector? Intelligence suggests they're supplying the Outer Rim separatists. But there's more." The Admiral lowered his voice further. "We believe they have a contact in the prison administration." Max's expression didn't change. "Officer Rivera." "No, she's clean. We're still identifying the leak. Be careful who you trust." "I always am." The Admiral stood, signaling the end of their meeting. "Your next contact will come through standard channels. Continue as planned, Agent Carter." This slip, using Max's real name, Noah Carter, was deliberate. If anyone was listening despite the dampening field, it would confirm that the prisoner was indeed Max Holloway, and the Admiral had mistakenly used the wrong name. "It's Holloway," Max corrected loudly. "You've got me confused with someone else." The Admiral feigned embarrassment. "Of course. My apologies, Mr. Holloway. Too many cases to keep straight. After the Admiral left, Max was escorted back to his cell block. Several prisoners watched him with renewed interest. Important visitor, Sarn the Dravidi commented as Max passed. Someone from Earth government. Just my appeal lawyer, Max replied. No good news. Back in his cell, Max carefully examined the data chip. Using his body to block the view from the corridor, he inserted it into a small reader hidden in the spine of his book. The information scrolled across a tiny screen embedded in the pages. The intelligence was concerning. The weapons being smuggled through the prison network were more advanced than initially believed. Neural disruptors capable of targeting specific species. The implications were disturbing. This wasn't just criminal activity. It was preparation for something much worse. Max memorized the key details, then carefully crushed the chip and flushed the remnants down the cell toilet. He resumed reading his book as if nothing had happened. His mission had just become more complicated. The fate of several worlds might depend on his ability to maintain his cover as just another human prisoner while gathering intelligence on a plot that threatened galactic stability. The irony wasn't lost on him. Everyone here feared him for being a Deathworlder, never suspecting that the real danger he posed had nothing to do with physical strength. After the Admiral left, Agent Noah Carter, operating under the alias Max Holloway, returned to his cell. His cellmate, a draconian smuggler named Kraz, watched him curiously. The reptilian alien's wings rustled slightly as he shifted on his bunk. Important meeting? Kraz asked, trying to sound casual. Noah shrugged. Just my appeal lawyer. No good news. Too bad. Kraz stretched his membranous wings as much as the small cell would allow. Been meaning to ask you something since the fight. What's that? You could have really hurt Zorax. Killed him even. Why didn't you? Noah paused, considering his answer carefully. His mission required him to maintain deep cover, to appear as just another Deathworlder criminal, while gathering intelligence on the criminal networks operating within the Galactic Detention Facility. Excessive violence would have drawn unwanted attention from prison authorities. But there was more to it than that. Where I come from, Noah said finally, we have a saying. The true measure of strength isn't in how much damage you can inflict, but in how much you choose not to. Kraz considered this. Strange philosophy for a Deathworlder. Noah smiled slightly. Maybe that's why we survived our Deathworld in the first place. Later that evening, Noah observed the prison yard from his cell window. Various alien species gathered in small groups, the hierarchy shifting since his confrontation with Zorax. The power vacuum had created opportunities for his real mission, tracking the weapons smuggling operation. He noticed Officer Rivera speaking with a Quellan guard near the security station. Her body language suggested tension. Noah made a mental note to watch their interactions more closely. The Admiral had confirmed Rivera wasn't the leak, but someone in the prison administration was helping the smugglers. Lights out in 5 minutes, announced the automated system. As the cell block dimmed, Noah added quietly, the most dangerous predators aren't the ones that roar the loudest. They're the ones patient enough to wait for the perfect moment and controlled enough to use exactly the force required. No more, no less. In the darkness, he could feel Kraz shifting uncomfortably, suddenly reevaluating everything he thought he knew about humans. Noah closed his eyes, mentally reviewing the new intelligence from Admiral Bennett. 3 more months in this prison playing the role of Max Holloway. 3 more months among aliens who fundamentally misunderstood what made humans dangerous. It wasn't their strength or their endurance or their adaptability, though those helped. What truly made humans formidable was their capacity for strategic thinking under pressure, for calibrated response, for turning apparent weakness into advantage. Tomorrow, Noah would begin the next phase of his mission. He would use his new status in the prison hierarchy to get closer to the suspected weapons smuggling ring. Several of Zorax's former lieutenants had connections to the operation, and they now viewed the human with cautious respect. His confrontation with Zorax had been necessary but risky. The display of skill could have exposed him as more than a simple physics teacher serving time for smuggling. Fortunately, the aliens had interpreted his abilities through their own cultural lens, just another example of Deathworlder prowess rather than specialized training. As sleep approached, Noah thought about Earth, billions of light years away. How ironic that humans were feared across the galaxy for their physical capabilities when their true advantage had always been their minds. The aliens feared the wrong things about humans, and that misunderstanding gave Noah the edge he needed. Zorax had challenged a Deathworlder, and instantly regretted it. Not because of overwhelming force, but because of a failure to understand his opponent. In that, Noah reflected, the Valian had made the oldest mistake in the galaxy.